welcome everyone and call this meeting to the order of the El Dorado Hills Community Council held this day, Monday, August 1st, 2022. And with that, what I'd like to ask is all the members of the leadership team to briefly explain to us what their role is, and then we'll move into recognizing other commissioners and committee members from District 1. So let's start with John. Oh, we got so many Johns over here.
The one who spells this correctly. John Bania, District 1 Planning Commissioner, Infrastructure Lead.
John Davey, I'm the chair of the El Dorado Hills Area Planning Advisory Committee, and we are resident volunteers that analyze proposed development projects and provide feedback to the applicant, the county, and the planning process.
Untitled District 1 Supervisor.
Cindy Munt, Supervisor Heidel's assistant, and I do the community information and outreach for the council.
Glenn Krakow, Community and Economic Advisory Committee for the county, and I represent District 1 and also matters relating to El Dorado Hills.
Yes, and Michael Lilienthal, Deputy Chief of the El Dorado Hills Fire Department. I chair the public safety group. My main objective is to take any kind of community concern, make sure it gets the appropriate police, law enforcement, the fire department, whoever's got jurisdiction over that problem.
Very good. So with that, we don't have any of our leadership team on Zoom, it doesn't look like. So let's go ahead and identify committee and commission members who are present. Tita, would you please share with us your role?
El Dorado County Commission on Aging.
Thank you. I think that's probably it, unless there's somebody on Zoom, and I don't see anybody on Zoom either.
Yeah.
So very good, and thank you all for that. We will move to agenda item 2, adoption of the regular meeting agenda. Does anyone on the leadership team have any proposed changes to the agenda this evening? Seeing none, we'll accept the agenda as proposed. And with that, we'll move on to item 3, the public comment. This is the period of time during the meeting we would encourage anyone from the public who would like to address an item that's not on tonight's agenda is welcome to do that. Either step up to the podium or make sure you have a microphone, because that's what we need to use to make sure that people attending via Zoom can hear you. So at this point, I'll open it up to any public comments from participants here in the conference room. Anybody would like to speak to the commission on something, I shouldn't say commission, on to the council on something that's not on the agenda tonight? Okay, seeing none, and I'm not seeing any hand raised either.
No.
So we'll move on to item 4, and it's my pleasure to introduce our guest speakers this evening. I know Kristen was on, I see Olivia's on too. So Kristen Becker and Olivia and Byron Cooper of the El Dorado County Public Health Department will discuss some of the high priority programs they've got, some of the things that are going on in their world that we should all be aware of, because it's all about trying to better public health and the notification and information related to services associated with public health. So with that, I'll turn it over to Kristen and Olivia for kind of a brief self-introduction, if you'd like, in terms of your longevity with El Dorado County, your role, whatever it may be, and then into the presentation.
Absolutely, Kristen. Okay, I start.
Go ahead, Olivia, please.
Oh, I am a relatively new director of public health. I've been in this role for just about a year, and it's an exciting time for the public health department, as the majority of our programs are in the process of updating their work plans, which will act as a roadmap for the work we'll be doing in the coming years. It's important to all of us working in public health that our roadmaps reflect where our county would like to go. And so this evening, we request your assistance creating the roadmap for the work of the Tobacco Use Prevention Program. Kristen Becker is the manager of the Health Promotions Program. And at this point, I'd like to turn it over to her to talk about the options available for us to include while we update one of our local ordinances. Kristen?
Hi, good evening, everyone. Supervisor Heidel, thank you so much for inviting Olivia and I to present this evening and present prior. It's truly a pleasure to be able to get out, even though I'm at my desk still, but to get out and talk about public health and some of our programs, and then to get feedback. So thank you for this opportunity. Is it okay? I have a short presentation. Is it okay if I share my screen?
Yes,
Mhm.
please.
Okay. I hope you can see that okay. So my name's Kristen Becker. I'm a manager within the Public Health Department here in El Dorado County. I've been in El Dorado County for almost 9 years in September, and I've had various roles within Health and Human Services Agency, and I just absolutely love working in public health. So as Olivia kind of mentioned, what are we currently working on? This presentation is really, I wanted to focus on one key program tonight, and that key program is the Tobacco Use Prevention Program. And I wanted to give everyone an update on what we're currently working on. So one of the major things, it's actually not on here, but we're currently recruiting for the supervising health education coordinator position that will oversee the tobacco use prevention program. You may or may not know this, but after almost 34 years of service, Christy White retired last month, and she was overseeing the program. So we are currently recruiting for that position. We are also working on bringing the El Dorado County Ordinance number 4190, titled Clean Indoor Air and Health Protection Ordinance, into compliance with state law. So California has made it really simplified. They came out with a law that specifically said all workplaces are smoke-free. And it prohibits the smoking of tobacco products in all enclosed places of employment in California. So this ordinance was established prior to this new law, and it needs to be updated. And I think it's really going to simplify the ordinance, because the current ordinance kind of specifies where smoking is and is not prohibited. And this states that all enclosed places of employment is prohibited in California. So as we work on updating this ordinance, which we are very close and ready to present, there's an opportunity here. And that's why I'm really excited to be here tonight. So thank you for the invitation. But we can include more in this ordinance. We can do more than just bringing it into compliance with state law. So what does more look like? Well, when we're talking about this specific ordinance, there's two major areas. The first one is reducing exposure to secondhand smoke, tobacco smoke residue, tobacco waste, and other tobacco products. And the second major area is reducing the availability of tobacco. So why do more? As you may or may not know, there's no risk-free level of exposure to secondhand smoke. And the most smoke-free laws are the most effective way to protect individuals from secondhand smoke exposure. So when we talk about more, what could this look like? So I want to present some options on what more looks like, and then I want to get feedback. And you may not be able to provide feedback tonight, but the next slide I've included my contact information. So some options, if we look at chapter 8.60 of El Dorado County Ordinance, is currently titled Clean Indoor Air and Health Protection. So one suggestion could be just removing the word indoor and titling it Clean Air and Health Protection. And what could that look like within this ordinance? We can have laws that govern smoke-free outdoor air. And that could be dining, entryways, public events, recreation areas, service areas, sidewalks, and work sites. In addition, we can include laws on smoke-free housing. So that would look like non-smoking multi-unit housing, as well as non-smoking common areas. And we can really expand the definition to include electronic smoking devices and the use of cannabis. I just think of Christy when I present on this, that she would say smoke is smoke is smoke. So really expanding those definitions is important. So those are some options to consider in the Clean Indoor Air and Health Protection Ordinance that we currently have in place. Then if we look at the following chapter, 8.70, it currently is titled Prohibits the Sale of Tobacco Products from Vending Machines. So one suggestion could be to remove the words "from vending machines" and really narrow into prohibiting the sale of tobacco products. And what kind of options or laws can you look at to be included in that chapter? We're really looking at reducing the sale of tobacco products, so tobacco retail licensing. So I don't know how familiar everyone is with tobacco retail licensing, but it's definitely more than just collecting taxes. It's a way to protect kids. And tobacco retail licenses requires that all sellers of tobacco products get registered. It funds secret shoppers, and it ensures responsibility of those sellers to not sell tobacco products to underage. So it creates that accountability. And it's very interesting because I watched a short video last week where it made the comment that we require licenses to sell alcohol. We require licenses to sell houses, cars, even hot dogs, but we don't require licenses to sell tobacco products. And I thought that was really an interesting point. Other things we could look at is retailer location restrictions. So you could limit where tobacco products are sold. They could be limiting proximity to other tobacco shops. You could also limit proximity to homes and schools. Another option is the sale of tobacco products in pharmacies, so making pharmacies smoke-free. With that, pharmacies are really seen as healthcare facilities where people go to buy products and services and to get better and stay healthy. So that's an option, as well as banning flavored tobacco products. You may or may not know this, but the ban of the sale of flavored tobacco products is on the California ballot for November 8th, 2022. So those are some options that I wanted to outline today that we can look at, including in El Dorado County's ordinance. And I know I threw a lot of information out there. We're going to be doing more education and information and meeting with constituents about this. So I wanted to just say, as you are thinking about this, or if you're interested in learning more or have any questions, please reach out to me. My name is Kristen Becker. I'm a public health program manager. I've included my email and phone number on this slide. I'd love to hear from you and talk more about this. Olivia and I feel strongly that success is going to come from collaboration and working together. And we're both really passionate about that. So with that, that's all I really wanted to present this evening. And thank you so much for all of your time.
Kristen, comments or questions from leadership team members? Who wants to start?
I'll raise my hand.
Go ahead, John.
How long is the process to implement a new ordinance like this? Is it something that has to be revisited several times and before it comes up for final approval, or is it something that you were sort of focused on and then presented as one sort of one project essentially?
Olivia, do you want me to respond, or do you want to respond to that?
Sure. I'll fill in any gaps that are left over. You can go ahead and respond.
So we want to, and one reason today we wanted to present on this, because we want to get an understanding of the needs and interests and wants in our community, rather than in a vacuum come up with all these recommendations, suggestions, make all these edits to the ordinance, and then just say this is our recommendation. So right now we're really trying to solicit feedback. I believe the ordinance can be updated in stages, and so we wouldn't have to necessarily do all these options and move it forward. We could focus on a few areas and continue to progress in that manner. So I'm really looking to solicit feedback, and we are working to better understand our community. So we do a lot of surveys to understand what the desire is of El Dorado County. But in terms of length of time, I think we have a strong team in place that we could, we are very dedicated to the tobacco use prevention program. So we can move fairly quickly.
And I would say the answer depends. It depends on what the feedback is from the community. So if we receive feedback that the will of the community or the county is to just update it to come into compliance with state law, that would be one route that we would take. If we receive feedback that we're interested in exploring some of these other options, I think those options would require a little bit more groundwork to be laid, which may prolong our ability to update the ordinance. And so, as Kristen mentioned, I think this could instead, at this point, we're just trying to get a feel for what our county would like to see in this ordinance, and that will dictate the route.
Thank you.
Other questions?
Yeah, when it comes to restricting smoking, like say on sidewalks in the public right of way outdoors and things like, are you advocating restricting smoking inside people's apartments? Is that what you're advocating? Because I guess I would have some concerns about, basic freedoms that people have. I'm not a smoker. I appreciate the smoke-free environments in restaurants and so forth and public spaces, but when it comes to people's private spaces and stuff, I personally have some concerns about that for basic people's rights to do what they want.
A lot of the emphasis is secondhand, and I will share my story. I was exposed to a lot of secondhand smoke as a youth, and I think I've suffered health consequences as a result of it. So children don't get a choice. So that's one thing.
But, are we going to get a business telling people what to do in their own home? So when it comes to that, that's just a comment. So I don't know if they have any response to that. So.
Okay. I think there's a concern. This activity should not be viewed as Big Brother. It should be viewed as what is the right approach to get better public health? And how do we do that in a manner that protects people who are innocent when exposed to things unnecessarily?
Okay, then okay. I just had some Dorado potato chips on my way here because I forgot about the meeting and I was running late. And is this going to get to the extent that, the Dorado chips are not good for public health and so forth? So, where is that?
Chips? Is there secondhand effect of Dorito chips?
No, it's firsthand effects. I know.
That's your personal choice.
I know. Well,
there's a distinction between secondhand and
but
personal
I'm saying
choice,
in your
right?
own residence, I kind of bristle when it comes to that based on people's individual freedoms.
I will share. I don't think that's a unique perspective. I think a lot of people feel that way. And I also feel that a lot of people feel like the government sometimes overreaches and tells people how to live their life. And people in general don't like that. They like to have personal choice.
It's not outlawing smoking, so there is a distinction.
Well, I'm asking the question is the inference when you say restricting smoking in apartments and so forth, is that just outdoor or is it in their private space? That's the question.
I'll let Kristen provide her answer. So.
Okay.
Yeah, no, and it's a good question, and I do hear this question, and I understand. If it's a multi-unit housing, which is the option, somebody's right to breathe clean air versus someone's right to smoke. The right to breathe clean air, the smoker has no rights. And if you live in a multi-unit housing, you're susceptible to secondhand smoke. And multi-unit housing is no longer just a place where people live. It's a place where people live and work. So they don't have an option.
Did you say smokers have no rights? Is that what you said?
Smokers, their right to smoke versus somebody's right to breathe clean air. And the law states that any multi-unit housing, the landlord can make the housing completely smoke-free. So they have the legal right to make that whole unit smoke-free.
I think I've said enough. I've heard enough.
Well, and there is going to be a lot of difference in
Yeah.
opinion on these things. And when you look at the big picture of public health and what does it mean in terms of services?
Yeah.
How many people have to be treated ultimately because of secondhand exposure in hospitals and other things?
Well, and I know I built a house a few years ago, and the way they insulate and the way that, filtration systems are and so forth, I mean, they are wrapped so tight these days that you have to have a full-time fan to ventilate the house. It's so efficiently insulated and so forth. So I don't necessarily buy that argument in respect that I'm affecting other people in my own personal residence. But we're not going to resolve the issue today, but I've heard.
It's a good question. There's a lot of differences of opinion on that.
Yeah. Thank you.
Anybody else on the leadership council? I'll just mention before we turn it over for public input that when I was young, my father was a heavy smoker and my mom tried to make sure he was always outside, but that didn't happen. And when I was a young kid, I had earaches. And my dad, in the best interest of trying to help me with the pain of the earaches, was blowing smoke in my ears, not knowing the exposure I was getting. And I got quite a bit of that. So as a result, I believe that I have allergies and asthma conditions that can be related to that. I can't prove it, but my guess is if I wasn't exposed to that secondhand smoke, I might not have those breathing disabilities that occasionally happen. So I don't know. I mean, there's a lot of unknowns in terms of personal health, but I am concerned particularly with kids who don't have a right to say, don't smoke around. How do you protect them from that same exposure I had? And in this case, in my parents' case, it was lack of education and understanding the long-term effects of smoke.
Well, it's like the school system, how they're in other ways trying to step in and be the parent. At the end of the day, it's the parent's responsibility to make reasonable decisions and reasonable choices for their kids and their family. And it sounds like this is maybe another approach where the government wants to come in and be mom and dad to the kids for the sake of public health. And so
I don't think they want to be mom and dad. They want to protect the
they
public health.
want to have superior rights to
Want to
their
make sure
parents,
everybody has right to clean
like
air.
you've said, that, well, what about the kids? And so, what about the children and so forth? Well, they should have responsible parents that should know, when not to do stuff that's going to be a risk to the kids and stuff. So.
Or should. Okay. Very good. So let's turn it over for comments from the public. Ron, you want to go ahead and start?
Yes. I worked 24 years in a tobacco store in Sacramento,
Okay.
and the city of Sacramento passed an ordinance to ban the sale of flavored tobacco. And because pipe tobacco is naturally flavored, we couldn't sell pipe tobacco any longer. There are some cigars that have flavors to them, but most are aromatic, some don't smell good, some smell very well. But the business had to close because we couldn't sell our products in the city of Sacramento. And I think that that's one of the things that is going to come up in El Dorado County are the tobacco stores that sell flavored tobacco are going to have to close and, put those guys out of business, make it a graveyard sort of shopping center, because that's something that attracts people into a shopping center. We had that, but it closed, put 9 people out of work. And so I just feel that that's an underlying way of controlling the use of tobacco is close the stores. Then they can go online.
Kristen, do you have a response for that? I'm going to take these kind of individually because we may have a number of them that are disparate in terms of the content. Do you have a response for that? He's talking about flavored tobaccos as something that people would go after.
Yeah, so let me see, I just have notes because Senate Bill 793, which was signed into law on August 28th, 2020, was designed to ban the sale of flavored tobacco products and tobacco product flavor enhancers. That has since been, opponents have put that now on the ballot. So that's a California law. It's under Proposition 31, the flavored tobacco products ban. And you can vote yes or no on that in California. But I believe that El Dorado County can decide what they want to do in terms of, let's say if this doesn't pass and El Dorado County wants to ban flavored tobacco products, that is an option for our county.
Okay, but you're saying this November, there will be a ballot measure, Proposition 31 to that extent?
Yeah,
Correct?
yes,
Okay, all right. So we'll get to vote.
yeah.
Everybody can make their opinion and then we'll decide what the state, because the county government doesn't want to get into the position of taking over people's rights like maybe the state government does. I said maybe because it's all subjective. But I do think when it comes to secondhand exposures and health, that there are considerations that you have to think into that problem. And how do you minimize that exposure? Not necessarily totally outlaw everything, but how do you minimize that exposure? So there may be some other intermediate solutions to that. Education is clearly one of them, right? If people are educated, maybe the responsible parents listen to that and understand that it's not good to be smoking around your kids in an indoor environment where everything is trapped because there's no air circulation. You get no clean air from the outside. You just recirculate the stuff, right? So in any case, other comments or questions? Maria?
I think I heard the term public health, and I guess as moving sideways from tobacco use, I think something that is far more prevalent, in my opinion, is sugary soda. The cost of cigarettes, a pack of cigarettes, is just absolutely astronomical to me. I mean, it's just absolutely amazing how punitive the price of tobacco appears to be in my eyes. And I don't smoke. However, I was also exposed to secondhand smoke as a child. And I remember growing up that it was a nice gift to pick up cartons of cigarettes as gifts. And I will say, no, I don't. I just did a quick Google search. How many years can I expect before I die prematurely? But that's not really a good question because there is no answer. But then I also think, there we are at Safeway, and on the top shelf are these 2-liter bottles of sugary sodas. And sometimes they're like 99 cents a liter. And at what point do we say, in the interests of public health, do we not then seek to regulate, govern, educate our neighbors, our communities with those things that are truly harmful? Or another way of saying it would be, is public health going to be looking into sugary soda? I mean, I think former Mayor Bloomberg in New York City tried it and it really flopped horribly.
So Kristen, you want to respond to that? Sugary soda, is that something that's on the list somewhere?
Yes, it is. And great question. And thank you for bringing that up. That is a focus of 2 of our other health ed and promotions programs, specifically our oral health program and our SNAP Ed program that focuses on those sugar sweetened beverages and the impacts that has. So we do, that is a major focus area of ours. In terms of policy work, we do direct health education. We've looked into some policies partnering with schools, with the food bank, but recently, a couple years ago, we did a healthy vending machine in the county buildings to look at offering healthy options and not just sugary sweetened beverages. If that was of the interest of the county, policy work is extremely effective in making a difference in the health of population. So that is something that, we could look into and pursue.
I think for me, the difference between educating versus policy is when the behavior that one is doing, when it starts to affect somebody else who has no choice, that's where we start to think about whether policy is the right way to go. In the instance of sugary sweetened drinks, I think our main focus is education with our programs, because that's something that only affects the user. And so that's for me where the distinction between where something crosses into policy, it's when it starts to affect people that don't really have a choice. And that's why we're talking about this with the local ordinance for tobacco use. And I want to be clear
I
too.
agree.
Yeah, I want to be clear too that we're asking your opinion. We are not looking to come in and tell you what to do. This is, one of the first places that we're wanting to explore what the will of the county is. And so you do have a voice, and we will listen. And so I want to make sure that that's clear.
Okay, you had a follow-up?
Well, yes, because I think I have the impression that here we are really talking about children being the victims of secondhand smoke, and children are not the ones buying those ginormous multi-liter bottles of sugary soda.
Responsible parents?
Yes, parent, caretaker, an adult. I mean, basically, kids are not responsible for what they drink or put in their mouths. Not really, unless I'm being totally wrong on this. And you're going to say, no, a child has a choice. They can choose the sugar-laden whatever soda, or they can choose water. And it's their choice not to choose water.
Well,
I don't
along with those Doritos, I had a sugary drink on the way over, I have to
It's
admit.
your personal choice. Did it affect anybody else?
Well, yeah, but the
it's your choice.
fact of what I'm hearing is that, well, maybe we'll be limiting those freedom of choices. And maybe I'll have to order them on Amazon to get them in the future, or smuggle them in from Nevada. Like I have to if I want to do any Penafin, spraying my wood decks and stuff. Oh, did I say that? I don't know. To me, it's a freedom of choice, having choices. Now, if I had sugary sodas all the time, I'd have more of a weight problem than I have now. And I admit it, I have a weight problem. So, it wouldn't be wise. But you know what? At the end of the day, this is a freedom of choice issue. And so I bristle against that, quite frankly. And but yeah, if we can provide some healthy choices, that's great. Educate people. But, there I go again. So. Going after my sugary drinks and my Dorito chips.
We're talking public health.
Yeah,
and
wait,
the
what? Yeah, that's
cost of
right.
it.
We're also, but you know what? It's to me, I see it's infringing upon people's freedom of choice. That's where they're headed. That's where they're headed. Sorry, that's how I feel about it. My own personal opinion. So.
Okay, any other questions or comments from members? Yeah, John.
One quick suggestion is if we could wrap an education program around mentioning how tight our houses are, that we mention the need to get volatile organic compounds out of the air. In other words, when you cook the steak, when you cook the turkey, forget about the cigar, but when it gets to be the holidays, venting all that out in our tightly installed houses, fresh air.
I do think that's a strong educational thing, because the more clean, fresh air you can breathe, the better your health will be. I don't think anybody contests that, right? Unfortunately, in El Dorado County, in El Dorado Hills, we have a little bit of an issue with clean air because we live upslope from Sacramento, and we get a lot of this stuff coming up from the valley that, and a number of different development projects relative to air quality, it's an unattainable category. But you still do what you can to try to mitigate, which means reduce the additional emissions that go into the air. But we're subject to upslope flows from the valley that, we get that air a lot of times. And fortunately, sometimes it's a cooling air, which is nice, but it does carry contaminants and stuff that we breathe every day. So yeah, it's just another one of those things you have to look at. But I think the primary difference though is when you have a personal choice, I'm not trying to take away anybody's personal choice. It's when something affects other people that's a second hand, that they may not have enough knowledge of what the risks are, and they're being exposed to it. And then that's something they carry through life. And most of these things are cumulative. Lung damage is cumulative. It isn't just a week's experience or exposure or something, right? It's cumulative. So But I will also just mention that even unsugared sodas have their health risks. The material they use for sweetening sodas, if it isn't sugar or high corn fructose, has its own effects that can be medically proven to be not the best solution either. So sucrose and those kinds of things.
Or
I
hey,
don't wanna-
or
I don't wanna
that
debate
totally sugary things that are fermented that so many people like, hey, that's not necessarily very healthy. Tell people they can't drink
Does that affect
their
somebody on a
favorite
second-
alcoholic beverage
Does
at
that
home.
affect someone on a secondhand basis?
Uh,
You seem to be missing the distinction.
I'm not missing, you know
Personal
what?
choice versus
I'm not-
secondhand exposure.
I'm not missing it at all,
Okay, all right.
And if we learned anything about a lesson with COVID, in respect to personal choices and all that stuff, I won't get into that too much. I would hope we would have learned that in respect to our personal freedoms with the whole COVID experience that we went through and so forth, so. But,
Okay, last call. Anyone else in the conference room here that would like to speak on this before we go to Zoom? Okay, looks like we have one participant on Zoom with his hand raised, Joel
Joel.
Wiley.
Good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead, Joel.
To start off with, I've got 3 questions. The agenda said high priority programs, plural. We've just been talking about tobacco. Are there other programs that you're going to be talking about? That's question number 1. Question number 2, have you done a survey to find the percentage of residents in El Dorado County that are tobacco users? And the third one is, are these ordinances going to go to a public vote or to the Board of Supervisors?
Very good. I think Kristen can probably, and Olivia can both address those. So
Those are my startup questions.
thank you, Joel.
Olivia, do you want to tackle the first one on the high priority programs?
Sure. No, we're not going to be talking about any other programs today. We wanted to dedicate today to the tobacco use prevention program, but we will be back to talk about other programs.
Okay, Joel, I'll take your second question, which was surveying for tobacco use. So I have 2020 data. Almost 14% of adults are smokers. And that's compared to the state average of just over 10%. And then your third question regarding the ordinance, taking it to a vote. Right now, we're just presenting options and soliciting feedback. Olivia, I don't know if you want to.
So once we get, this will be an in-depth process of getting feedback from a variety of different constituents, including the board. And at some point, we will present different options to the board for the board to weigh in. So there will be opportunities to give feedback all along the way in a variety of different methods.
Okay. So hopefully that addressed your questions, Joel. More to come, but I wasn't sure if it was a singular program they wanted to highlight tonight or multiple, because the previous visit and sharing that came from public health, there was multiple things they wanted to talk to, but we'll do that at a subsequent meeting. So that's kind of the answer. All right, any other go backs by anybody? Good discussion, and if you have comments you'd like to make to Kristen or have a personal conversation, she's given us her contact information. Please feel free to reach out. Did you see something else I don't see?
Oh, Joel just put his hand back up.
Oh, Joel, did you have something else? Joel, you're muted. Did you have something else, or is your hand residual from before?
No, I just forgot to unmute myself, as usual.
Okay, all right. No worries, thank you.
I was having some trouble getting on this first on, so I wasn't on when you got to the public comment. And I was wondering if you were going to be talking about something other than tobacco on this. So if there's some point that I can make a public comment later on, I will do so. But thank you for the statistics on tobacco users in the county and the question about what's going to happen with the ordinance.
All right, with your indulgence, I'll move an additional public comment at the end of the agenda. I'd like to kind of get through everything now because
Thank
we
you.
need to, I think, progress, and then we'll go back to it if you can hang around.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
I'll shut up now.
You don't have to do that, but thanks for your participation. Let's move on then to, unless either Olivia or Kristen have any final words, any final comments. I want to thank you for the sharing the information again and reaching out, but any final thoughts?
No, just really appreciate the feedback. And we really do want to hear all the different perspectives so that we make sure that we come up with something that is palatable for as many people as possible. So thank you for.
Yeah, I'd just like to say thank you to everyone again, and thank you for the honest feedback. We really appreciate it, and we're taking it all in, and we're learning, and we want to be collaborative. We really do. So thank you, Supervisor Heidel and Cindy, for inviting us tonight. Thank you all for your time and listening to our presentation.
All right, again, thanks to both of you. Yep.
Bye,
So
thank
with
you.
that, let's go ahead. Yeah, you're welcome to stay if you like, but you're not obligated, obviously. So thank you for your attendance. With that, let's move on to item 5, Supervisor Communications. I think this is also going to be short. I'm always asked, is there anything more on Central El Dorado Hills? And the answer is no. The Parker Development Company has not approached the planning staff with a request to bring it to the Board of Supervisors or any other direction. So I know there's discussions going on in different areas, but nothing has come official back to the county. Likewise with Costco, nothing new has been received. I think we're in the same status we were before. I don't know how long that's going to last, but nothing new to report here.
They're still putting together their environmental documents, right?
As far as I know, but that wasn't the major gate forward. As you know, the gate forward was EDH 52 wanted the entrance into an all-way entrance into their project. It's on what I would consider to be the east side of Silver Valley Parkway, where Costco would be on the west side, in my opinion, but geometry gets a little bit twisted in there.
West side.
Yeah. So, but there's nothing new there because I think ADH 52 was still looking for an intersection, a lighted intersection, an entrance in there, and the county DOT has said right in, right out, but nothing more than that.
An additional intersection in the middle.
Country club, yeah, an added intersection that's really too close to Highway 50 by DOT's interpretation. So I think that's the major bone of contention, and as far as I know, there's been no new progress on that. All right, I'm going to move on to item 3, the homeless shelter. Some of you may have seen articles in the newspaper and been involved with some of the discussions, but the County Board of Supervisors has been seeking to start up a homeless shelter and navigation center, and we've asked staff several times to go through and look at options or alternatives for locations. We did pass an urgency order to try to move forward with some activities to try to get it done at the bequest of the city of Placerville. The city of Placerville's contention is that there's a high fire risk when you have homeless people out in the dirt, in the fields, around the trees, cooking fires, those kinds of things. And the fire season was something we were hoping to get the homeless shelter stood up for, i.e. by September. So the latter part of the fire season. It's now apparent that that's not going to happen in that time frame. Two things that happened recently is if there was a claim filed against one of the supervisors that to the FPPC that there was a conflict of economic interest. It was filed against Supervisor Wendy Thomas. She made a statement in the Board of Supervisors meeting that she has her attorney involved with this. She's gone through county council, and the county council's determination there was no conflict of economic interest with her family's property holdings versus the effects that it would have on primarily the upper part of Broadway to remove the homeless and hopefully get them directed into the shelter, or many of them directed into the shelter. So she's responding to the claim from the FPPC. And as a result of that, the Board of Supervisors decided to delay, i.e. continue the discussion on that matter, and it comes down to approval for funding and a budget transfer to August 23rd, or sometime before that, if a special meeting were to be called based upon elimination of the claim about FPPC. And so we don't know how long that's going to take, how it's going to proceed, but we're hoping for a quick response from the FPPC, and then we can move on and bring it matter back to the Board of Supervisors. The other thing I'll mention is that in the presentation that was made to the board, it was identified that there's significant delays to the original September timeframe. We're now looking at January 2023 at the earliest, and a lot of those delays were associated with PG&E's availability to install a new 400 amp service. They've told us they can't do that until December. And so there's been multiple requests to look at workarounds or other things, and the bottom line is there is no workaround. PG&E has to do the work. And so instead of, we hope for targeted September opening of a homeless shelter, it's now looking like January 2023. So I'll also mention that Volunteers of America has been selected to staff that homeless shelter. That's an important part of this, because part of it, as we mentioned, is navigation and bringing wraparound services, which would also be provided by Health and Human Services. But if you look at the statistics, the counties, the unincorporated part of the county has something in the neighborhood of 20 presumed homeless and in the dirt. That doesn't include the city of Placerville. And if you look at the total numbers and the point in time counts and other things, it says the biggest issue has to be the city of Placerville with their homeless. And we know that Broadway is a place that has a lot of that, but I also know there's homeless in and around Cameron Park, in and around El Dorado Hills. The last presentation that we had by the county HOT team, which is homeless outreach team, they showed us a map, and I think that's part of the Legistar documentation. I hope the presentation got out there. It should have. But it showed a map of active known homeless encampments and ones that existed that have been closed down. So that was a snapshot in time, but it was informative that there was actually one that was out near Folsom Lake. There was a homeless encampment for a while, and now has been taken off the active list. So those things, I'm sure, come up daily where there's new reports, others disappear. So that point in time, or the time count, the time slice, you take a look at that, you're going to get different results. So I made a plea to see if we could get more public awareness of that, if they could consider putting some of those maps out on a website where people can understand where the homeless encampments are. I'm not sure that that's going anywhere, but I think it's important for transparency purposes to know where they and their kids and other people may have an exposure.
Is there any responsibility to determine any environmental impact as a result of that? I mean, to what level would the county be required to do that?
The county does not have a formal CEQA requirement based upon the urgency, the emergency declaration. One of the sites that was looked at, actually some of the funding that was looked at would require a NEPA analysis, but that's separate. So at this point in time, there is no formal CEQA requirement because this is a urgency matter, short term, which also allows the county to pre-select contractors as opposed to having RFPs that could take 6 months. So it's a means of expediting, recognizing there will be local contractors that are involved. That's all part of the discussion. So that's an ongoing thing. And I think as we get some more time in the schedule, we'll be able to do more of that. But my understanding was DOT purchased that property several years ago as part of the Missouri Flat Freeway Interchange project. And at that time, there were studies done and analysis done as to whether there were contaminated soils on that property. And the answer was no, there are not. And DOT purchased the property. So it's part of the road fund. Ultimately, if something is done on a more permanent basis on that site, whatever monies are generated to reimburse the county for that property should go to the road fund. That's one of the commitments I have personally tried to challenge, but if DOT did the CEQA requirements at the time they bought the property, it should be without environmental issues with previous use.
Well, there's different types of environmental impacts with this type of use, and we've talked about this before.
Yep.
My big concern is that bike trail that the county built at county and state funds. to connect Missouri Flat to Placerville Drive. And I won't get into any birdcage characterizations. However,
Are you talking about environmental now, or are you talking
I'm
about
talking
public
about,
safety?
well, I'm talking both.
Okay.
I'm talking both, you know, in respect to, you know, the impacts to that bike trail by having a facility right next to that. So,
It will be a managed facility to the extent it can be, so.
well, yeah, and how well can they manage that to ensure, you know, the public safety and the public health for, you know, because that's an important connection, you know, pedestrian bikeway connection between those interchanges. And I'm very concerned about the impact that that's going to be.
Situation exists on Broadway today? For the city of Placerville?
Does that issue exist?
Yes.
Absolutely.
Okay. So would this better that situation?
I would think you would have an equal impact to what the problems that you have on Broadway.
I would
Go
think
talk to the businesses down there. I
think
have a
the
friend who owns a
public-
coffee shop down there.
Public safety fire aspect of it would be substantially different. But I'm not gonna get into CEQA stuff. That's something that we have been able to move beyond at this point. But if there is the use of the property on a more permanent basis, there would have to be an analysis. Okay, the last thing I want to report on, then we'll take any questions or comments, is we are in the process of hiring a new director of Health and Human Services. So Olivia and Kristen's boss, so to speak. With that announcement, which should be very forthcoming, the Board of Supervisors has to take formal action on it. There have been talks about a reorganization of that organization, the total organization, not only public health, but behavioral health and the whole thing, in terms of separating off some of the responsibilities that they currently have and putting it into a new department. So I'm not at liberty to talk more about that, but if that moves forward and the Board of Supervisors approves that reorganization, there will be substantial different surfaces in terms of who provides support for various organizations. So I suspect there's a high probability that'll happen, but it hasn't happened yet. So the primary thing was getting the new director on board for Health and Human Services, and then moving forward with the reorg, if that's to their liking. So with that, comments or questions about any of the two items we really talked about? Yeah, Maria.
Curious, with the delay of opening the homeless shelter, does that mean the homeless people will continue to live out in the field?
There's no other place for them to live. The Boise law basically says that unless you have a shelter area that provides the proper type of housing, not a tent on the side of a hill type of thing, that you can't remove people from public property. So a lot of that property is private, and I think they've gone in and tried to ask the homeless to be relocated, but again, it's the city of Placerville. It's not our sheriff's hot team. So I don't have direct visibility of what the discussions have been with the city of Placerville, because they have their own police department. And I'm not sure what the police department has done relative to that situation on Broadway. But yeah, they will continue to live where they're living now until such time as the shelter opens up. The other thing I'll mention is what's been identified is that the way that you would become, the access to the shelter would become available is through an outreach program. So there would be interviews conducted. They would look at who are the most health sensitive individuals, who perhaps has the right interest in bettering their lives. It would go to the shelter as opposed to not be invited to go to the shelter. So it's almost like a by invitation, the way the process has been determined or defined. And that's come from the acting director of public health right now, not public health, but all of our health organizations. So there's a lot of things yet to happen, but yeah, unless there's a facility identified, they're going to be out there. And so winter shelters are being talked about again. And as we know, there have been several groups that are faith-based primarily, but also Housing El Dorado that had some winter sheltering for the homeless. And so we're looking at probably having to do that again. Nobody likes that answer, but several of the churches participated. And I know there was a site in downtown Placerville that was used for a homeless shelter. And if you listen to the people that were involved with that through Housing El Dorado, they had no issues with it at all. It worked just fine. So But yeah, we're facing that again for the cold winter months. Because there will be no opportunity, it sounds like, until January to move people into a more appropriate sheltering environment. On.
Are there any steps being taken to identify those individuals with health problems or anything else prior to this opening?
So there's a lot of standing records, particularly with Marshall Hospital, of who the homeless are, who are in for treatment all the time. And the unfortunate part is there's a 911 call, they get transferred to Marshall Hospital, proper treatment is given, as I understand it, they're released to go back out to whatever environment they came from. And if you're talking about wounds and stuff that require sterilized replacement of bandages and stuff, there's no guarantee any of that stuff happens the way it works today. So they're liable to be back in Marshall with a big infection. But Marshall Hospital has pretty good knowledge of who those repeat people are who come into the emergency room. They would certainly be on that high eligibility list. The other thing is our point in time count collected some of that data. And then also the winter sheltering groups pretty much have a history of some of the people that are there in terms of do they have significant health problems now, issues, and they would certainly gravitate to that list of known people with health issues. But ultimately, our hot team would also be asked, you know, if they're aware of people who have particular problems that should be given that opportunity. So it'll be a collaborative effort to try to determine who gets that encouragement to come to the shelter and participate in the program. But yeah, unfortunately, it looks like it'll probably be the end of January now before that happens. So.
Is that where they have to go out and find them and tell them, hey, look, the shelter's open, come in?
And that's basically if they are on public property. The Boise ruling, as I understand it, requires you to have a place you can send them. And that means you encourage them to go, you offer them the site. My understanding is they can be removed from public places if they refuse, which just means they'll probably go to the private lands and if they don't want to go to the shelter. But at least from the standpoint of public places, you are allowed then to remove them from the property if they're not willing to accept the invitation to go to the shelter. So Sherman Haggerty's in the back. He's probably got a lot more experience with this stuff than I do. He is part of the Volunteers of America team. And so I know he's had a lot of communications with the hot team and trying to understand from other alternatives perspective where the sheriff is with things and try to make sure we do as much dialoguing on this and figure out the right program. You know, they have a lot of experience, but we need to use the local resources as well to understand what our population needs are. But I think we have a lot of ability to gather that information, and I'm sure there's already a record of it somewhere. I just don't know how extensive it is. But yeah, so we probably start there.
So the point in time count, we still don't have the numbers, or we do have the numbers?
We do not have the new numbers. I've not seen new certified numbers. The last one that was done and validated was a little over 600 or about 600 homeless. And that includes youth that are not unsheltered, but they are homeless, but they're surf couching with one friend or another friend. And so they're included in that point in time count, but they're not unsheltered per se. Right? And then there's a lot of people who are homeless that are sheltered, but in a vehicle. And that's a different set of population. So there's all these different categories. And one of the things that the supervisors have tried to look at is how do we encourage the establishment of a safe parking area or areas in El Dorado County where the homeless who have the ability to be mobile and move around feel like they can go and have access to restrooms and be safe from the standpoint of lighted, you know, not a dark space that somebody's going to come and break in and steal stuff. And, you know, so those are other things that are being considered. And so hopefully through EDOC, we'll be able to define some of those safe parking areas for the homeless, because I think that's another big thing that we have not really approached in El Dorado County, but a lot of other communities have. So, any other comments on anything I spoke to? And I don't see any hands up. So with that, we can move on to our monthly reports, and we always start with public safety. And I'm not sure, is Andrew on CHP?
No.
We don't have CHP participation. Okay. And we don't have, and so over to Chief Lilienthal, because we do have a report of, I think, a new sheriff's attendee, to Sheriff's Department attendee to help us understand the crime rates that they reported in the past. And so to Chief Lilly.
Yeah, so from EDSO, we will have Deputy Gorola joining us here in the future. He had planned on attending tonight, but unfortunately, he had an urgent matter that they just encountered right before the meeting, so he had to leave and attend to that. So I apologize that he's not here, but I do have a lot to share from the fire department. And I kind of put the picture up there just so you get an idea. About 1:30 this morning, we had a house fire down in Latrobe area. And what you see there was a fully involved 2-story house. Fortunately, everybody got out okay. The animals got out okay. Happened very fast. It started on that upslope, about 1.5 acres of vegetation as well, grass and brush. And we really got fortunate because it was a little bit humid last night, as you know, and so the weather was favorable. There wasn't any wind, but even with a humid evening, this was about 1:30 in the morning, so middle of the night, there was still some houses all around in this area, and we had fire within 50 feet of multiple other homes. So it was tragic. Obviously, we lost one family, lost their home, but from the aspect of not having a major incident in the Latrobe area, we just got lucky on time of day and weather. So we're grateful for that. I kind of thought the picture would do more justice than me giving you the example.
Cause is probably not known at
So
this
we're still
point.
doing the investigation. There's nothing suspicious with it. It appears to be an accidental cause. We're still ironing out a couple details with that. I'm actually handling that role right now, but we just got a couple more pieces to lock down. But there's nothing appears suspicious at all. It just seems like likely it's going to be an accidental cause fire.
Hear anything about response time with the Latrobe station?
Yeah, so fortunately, Engine 87 is sitting in the south end of the business park. They got there very quickly, as well as Engine 91 down in Latrobe at South Shingle and Latrobe. So both engines were there quickly. We had a lot of resources available at the time because in the middle of the night, most everybody was available. That worked out really well. And again, it was an interesting call because it came in with shots fired and they wanted us to stage. So even though there was a house on fire, it came in and shots fired. What it ended up being, there was ammunition inside the house. The ammunition got heated up. The neighbors heard the ammunition rounds going off and thought there was something potentially unsafe going on. So in any case, that worked out okay. We didn't delay our response. We had some information, basically, that we went ahead and went in anyways. But sort of an interesting experience for this evening, or for this morning rather. The other thing I'd talk about is just we've had a lot of unique events going on lately. We've had several barbecue fires, and I think the chief mentioned it at the last meeting. Why I was not able to attend, but we're going to keep messaging over and over again. Check your barbecues for the grease that drips down in your burners. That tends to be a hazard, and we've had several fires that have done a lot of damage to homes just by getting inside and breaking windows and setting off fire sprinklers. So just a reminder to everybody on the safety aspect of it's barbecue season, right? We're all out hopefully doing that. So just remember to keep those clean and take care of your family and protection for that. I talked about the Ryan Ranch Road fire. We also had a fire at the new Ace Hardware the other day. It wasn't a large fire, but it was a pallet that triggered one of the sprinklers to go off and flooded the inside of Ace Hardware, which all of us are anxiously waiting for them to open. It looks like it's going to be a great store. It was full of product at the time, so smoke and water damage, but they really are churning hard to get that reopened here very shortly. So it was a little delay. I don't think it was a humongous delay, but it was just noteworthy. And fortunately, the fire sprinkler activated and really put most of the fire out before our arrival. So that was a good thing. The other call we've had, pretty traumatic, is really sad. There was an auto versus pedestrian on Dorado Parkway. It was a 13-year-old girl getting ready to go to Oak Ridge High School as a freshman. And unfortunately, she passed away last night. So for the last few weeks, she's been at UC Davis getting treatment, and unfortunately, she passed away. So very traumatic for the family, for the county, for our firefighters. These kind of calls, we talk about that we all carry a bag of rocks, and those rocks are the stressors that you encounter as you go through your career. And certainly seeing a kid hurt like that is something that really impacts them. And so they're all want to go to the funeral. They all want to be involved in supporting the family, and so it's really a sad event.
The good news is it wasn't a DUI or anything.
It's not anything like
so
that.
It's not something that you.
Tragic accident. But we all tell our kids, be safe. Look when you cross the street. We always worry about that, and it's for good reason. We've had a lot of resources deploying. Matter of fact, I've been on my phone most of the evening. There's resources moving out of El Dorado County, engines responding all over Northern California right now. You've seen the big fires up to our north in Siskiyou County. There's been a bunch of lightning strikes. There's fires everywhere up there right now, and it's drawing a lot of resources from all throughout California. Matter of fact, we have 4 engines leaving right now as we speak to head up that way. So the McKinney Fire, again, Siskiyou, that one's 56,000 acres. It's the biggest of the fires up there. But there's several other in that 1,000 to 3,000 acre size. And it's real steep terrain. If you've ever been up there, it's not too far from the Oregon border. So a lot of resources move in that direction. Fortunately, the Oak Fire that was down in Mariposa area, that fire is doing really well. It's 20,000 acres, but it's 72% contained. So a lot of the engines and resources that were there are currently moving as well to the north. We've also had a couple fires, one in Nevada County and one in Amador County. The Rice's fire was in Nevada County. That was June 29th, about 1,000 acres. And the Electra fire in Amador County was 4,500 acres. And El Dorado County firefighters responded to all these fires here, including El Dorado Hills employees. So a lot going on. It's definitely starting to heat up, and as far as activity-wise, and so more to come. We're going to keep working through our fire season. The last news is always happy. We like talking about it. Is our training center in the business park is well underway. If you're ever down there and you're near our fire station 87, just to the north, you'll see a lot of buildings now coming out of the ground. So they're props for us to go burn in. And break up and do damage inside. It's going to be a lot of fun, but a lot of great training. And it's well underway, and it looks to finish in early spring next year. So with that, end of report.
Do you have any questions? I do. We're still receiving email periodically about vegetation management inspections and vacant lot. And so I'm hoping that those things are gradually getting closed out. And I don't know if you've been able to get a contractor on board to go out and do the
We just
mitigation where necessary.
understood within the last week, we just cleared 8 lots. We're actually real happy because we only had to clear 8 lots where we actually do the abatement on behalf of the resident, and then we lien their tax bill to recover our costs. But really to have the number be only 8 lots that we had to abate was what we consider success. So the program, as it gets traction year over year and people start learning our expectations or our needs to protect everybody, they know now. So they're starting, it appears, to voluntarily comply. So that's great news. We also have lots of our county defensible space inspectors in our partnership between the El Dorado Hills Fire Department and the county. Under the county's vegetation management ordinance, we are doing inspections on behalf of the county. And they've been up in Lake Valley. They've been all over the west slope of El Dorado County doing inspections. They're in full swing. They're all working out of here at Station 85. And then they deploy out throughout the day and are doing lots of inspections. So I would say highly productive, and definitely all the wheels are turning at I would consider to be full speed right now.
So for Cindy and my purposes, who should we be referring constituents to who are concerned because there's a vacant lot, there's a draw, whatever? Because I know at one point we were referring to Marshall. That's probably not appropriate with the reorg that happened. So who should they be forwarded to?
Sure. We welcome any concerns over vegetation management, your neighbors, you drive by parcel. Just call our main phone number, which is 916-933-6623. And there's a phone tree that'll say if you have a concern over vacant lots, press 6 or whatever the true number is. I don't recall off the top of my head, but it is 916-933-6623. It's the main fire department phone number, and that will route your call to the defensible space inspectors.
Excellent. Thank you. Any other leadership team questions or comments?
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Great work. And obviously we're in the middle of the season.
Yep.
Maybe when the rain's coming. But yeah, it's going to be a long season again this year. That's for sure. So any questions or comments from anyone here present in the conference room? Not seeing any, and I'm not seeing any Zoom hands up. So very good. Thank you for the report, Chief. And move on then to economic development. We'll go right down the line here. How's that?
Okay, let's turn this on. Not too many new things. There's a new discussion that Supervisor Heidel and I have had, and we've brought some other folks in about business incubators. And just to help if people aren't exactly sure, it's an organization that helps startup companies and individual entrepreneurs develop their businesses that can, through providing a full-scale range of services, starting with management training, office space, and it can even involve venture capital funding. There are several going on in the area right now. Roseville just kicked one off. They did invite El Dorado County, I guess. We were invited to invest $50,000 to help fund 5 businesses. So I don't know if that was necessarily in our county's best interest to help businesses starting in Roseville. Hopefully we could start something here. Also, there's discussion along the Highway 50 corridor with the Rancho Cordova Chamber, Folsom Chamber, El Dorado Hills Chamber about doing that. And Folsom has recently started one. And we are going to be meeting with them, several of us. So there's some interest through the chambers. There are quite a few people in El Dorado Hills that have started and do start their own businesses and who might be interested in some collaborative space, some sources for finance, hopefully some opportunity to start businesses that would be homegrown, that would stay here in the county and use some of the space that we do have. So there's a fair amount of interest and discussion, and there could be some common ground between Rancho Cordova, Folsom, and El Dorado Hills representing El Dorado County. And so this could kind of be the tip of the spear for the county, you might say, with a business development center. So it's worthy of discussion. We do have a meeting with Folsom's group to see what they've done, to see about partnering, starting our own. So something new, something interesting. And it also may help keeping youth here too.
Questions or comments for Glenn?
Let me just ask, Vice President. In that effort, when we're talking about the Highway 50 corridor, I know it's always traditionally been Rancho Cordova, Folsom, El Dorado Hills. Any interest in Chamber Park, Shingle Springs, that chamber being involved, or?
I would hope so, because I would hope we could utilize the county business development group, and this is something that would definitely fall within their wheelhouse. And I think we would be lucky to benefit that El Dorado Hills could be the center for it, just because of our population, office space, location of Highway 50, so it sounds like it might set well here with our business park, but be a countywide office or opportunity.
So the county was made aware that the ranch marketing ordinance is going through a revision process, a review process, and then it's going to come back to the Board of Supervisors, I guess. Has CDAC been directly involved with looking at that, and is there active dialogue?
There
with
is
staff?
not direct dialogue, but there are members of CDAC who are involved in other ways, but it is not something that's under CDAC. So it's something I'm not aware of. It's just something I've heard of because I know other members are also involved with it.
Okay. That concerns me a little bit, but I'll take, the questions to the appropriate supervisors leading that as to why CDAC doesn't have a more active role in
Right,
looking
I
at
did see it at the Board of Supervisors meeting, but it is not actively part of CDAC.
No. Any audience questions for Glenn? Questions or comments? From the economic development, okay, and we don't have anybody with their hand up for right now. So with that, let's just go down the line here. So let's go ahead and move to our community information and outreach. Cindy.
Oh, you next. Okay, perfect. Okay, well, this Friday is the National Night Out is finally coming back. It's going to be at the El Dorado Hills CSD. They're offering free barbecue. They're going to have music and children's activities, canine demonstrations, bomb squad explosive demonstrations. The El Dorado Hills Fire Department, they're going to be providing CPR demonstrations and training. There's going to be all kinds of fun stuff. So that is this Friday from 5:30 to 8. Continuing every Sunday will be the farmers market at the El Dorado Hills Town Center, and that's from 8 in the morning till 1 in the afternoon. And the concerts at the El Dorado Hills Town Center continue live on the Boulevard. They're every Thursday at the Stephen Young Amphitheater. Those are from 7 to 9 p.m. On August 20th, the El Dorado Hills CSD is going to have a trail and safety etiquette class. It's going to be at the New York Creek Trail, and that'll be at 9 a.m. from 9 to noon. And they're going to be talking about trail safety activities, and they're going to be offering refreshments there as well. On August 20th to August 26th is going to be the Love and Kindness Week. It's a community tribute to Jenny and Wally Richardson. Wally Richardson just went to his memorial service recently. Wonderful couple. They were really dedicated to spreading love and kindness. So the CSD is going to They're challenging the El Dorado Hills residents to show love and kindness throughout El Dorado Hills by doing some daily acts of love and kindness. And they have, every day they have a different thing that you can do. So all of these events will be on listed on the supervisor's page, on the county page. So, and then the final day on Friday will be a concert. It's a Love and Kindness concert at the El Dorado Hills CSD. And they will be doing memorial tributes for Wally Richardson at that event. And then the last, on August 31st, the El Dorado Hills CSD is going to have a park party. And that will be at Windsor Point Park, and that will be from 5 to 8 p.m. And they have free food and activities for the whole family. So that's it.
Okay, so I'm going to knock off some of these that we don't have participation very quickly. Good governance. Richard has been attending, Richard Ross has been attending the Charter Review Committee today. They ended probably about an hour ago, maybe more than that. But the primary thing, and Richard's our primary representative. Tim White is our alternate representative. They were both present at the meeting. The most notable thing was Bill Carey was elected as chair for that review committee, I should say, and then Jim Attrition was vice chair. So they've gotten their leadership team defined. They were defining additional dates that they could calendar meetings to start to accept public input. So I would encourage anyone who has an interest in making inputs to the charter process, reach out to our two representatives, primarily through Richard, and make sure that those are known so that they can present them to the rest of the commissioners and have discussion on it. So they're just entering into that phase of trying to organize themselves and understand where they're going to get the information that's needed to properly review the elements of the charter and then make decisions or recommendations ultimately the board. And I'll just remind everybody, before anything can change on the charter, it has to go to a vote of the residents. So we'll be looking at 2024 before that happens. So we have a little bit of time, but we have a 5-year review cycle requirement, and that's what this is a 5-year review. So that is underway. And then the only other one I'll report on is the Healthy Communities. Our third mental health forum, just to remind everybody, has been scheduled for September 19th back here in this same location. That'll start at 5 p.m. So just get that on your calendar early. And with that, those are the only two I had to report on. So let's go to John Davey with APAC's report.
Make this painful for John. So APAC, well, we did not have a meeting last month. We simply didn't have any projects that had significant updates that required us to review or to share with the public. And again, we don't really have a lot of project updates. What we do have are some informational things. The meeting is here in this building on August 10th at 6:30 p.m. We'll also stream it live on Zoom, as we always do. We'll have an update about El Dorado County Advisory Committees. You know, APAC is one committee, but there are many other committees in each of the communities to sort of highlight maybe the distinctions and the differences, what they do, what we don't do. A lot of people seem to think that APAC could act as sort of a community grand jury, which is not what we do. So the reviewing projects is difficult enough. So we'll talk about that. There are a lot of the, we've been sharing the meeting information about the other advisory committees in the county when they occur, because they don't get a lot of attention. Several of them are board appointed, and they've been doing their meetings in Placerville, and they've been recording them there. I know the Cameron Park DSC is excited to get back into Cameron Park because that's where the residents are. They can come to the meetings, but making them available via Zoom and recording them that way is helpful for their communities as well. So we want to support other advisory committees because it's, even though they're appointed by the board, some of them, it's hard volunteer work. So we just want to update people about what other organizations are doing and how maybe APAC is a little bit different. We're going to talk about some comments we're going to be submitting to the planning department for a few upcoming TAC meetings for El Dorado Hills projects. And then we're going to have an update on just sort of the overall catch up on projects in process in El Dorado Hills. So it shouldn't be a terribly long meeting. But we appreciate you either being here, being online with Zoom. And again, anybody who wants to help participate, our emails all over our website, edhapac.org, or on our agenda, each of our officers have their email addresses listed as well. So we'd love to hear from the community and put you to work. So if there are no questions, we can slow down. Is that fast enough? Yeah. Okay.
All right, for the planning commission, all's quiet. We had our meeting last week and then the next meeting is canceled, so I guess we still are in recovery from Central. But, and then the one item we have today is the Bridlewood roundabout, proposed roundabout. And according to Ron, there's still some varied opinions on whether or not the community supports that or not. So I know the Director of Transportation met with the group and they're planning another meeting, which I think Supervisor Heidel and I are going to attend. And then Supervisor Heidel updated me that the Transportation Commission is proposing to approve $740,000 for,
400.
to go towards that proposed project. So, so stay tuned. So
That's what's called Cmac funds, Congestion, Mitigation, and Air Quality. So that's state funding that is available for various purposes. And this would improve quality of air, because if you can keep traffic moving as opposed to everybody coming to a stop, that's an improvement in air quality ultimately. So that's the benefit, and that's why the Cmac funding would be applicable here. So the Transportation Commission will meet on Thursday, and I don't think there'll be any resistance to adding this to the current list that they have, because there was a residual of over $1 million available. So seems like it's a good fit, and so compliments to our DOT for taking that to the commission and hopefully finding the resources.
And we were updated from DOT director that is it by the end of this year? The overlay on Eldorado Hills Boulevard is going to be done by this fall.
It starts, because all the
Right.
ditching and stuff is done by this year, and then it's a 2-year project.
Okay,
so
next
the
year, the
overlay
surfacing
probably
will be done by next year. So they're starting it this year, so.
They broke it up into 2 segments, so.
Yeah.
Some of the surfacing should happen this year, but the majority of it, I think, is.
But what they typically do is they do the ditching and then they patch the really bad spots and then they overlay everything. Is what the general process is, so.
Yeah, Ron.
I just want to put the compliment out.
Put yourself on.
I just wanted to put the compliment out to Rafael Martinez, Director DOT, for the presentation. He had a lot of material to present in a short time. And he presented, how the money was going to, come into play. But he did get a little resistance, from the group that was there. And that's, in my opinion, it's, that was the gist of it. But he did a really good job of making the presentation to the group. And we had something like 50 people online, and we had like another 50 people in our clubhouse. So
Excellent. Good to hear, because we have both been talking with Rafael about some of the things he needed to include in the presentation. It sounds like he captured some of those. So, because the public is always concerned when something's going to change, right? Is it a plus or a minus? And I think from a lot of people that understand public safety and traffic circulation and stuff, this has got way more pluses than people could perceive as minuses. So.
And according to Raphael, he is going to have some proposed drawings to give a better idea what we, he thinks that it may look like, based on some of the concerns that were raised, so.
So, and I'll chime in too, is that I know the Eldorado Hills CSD, their board of directors, it's probably the June meeting, maybe it wasn't July, but they had talked, that was an item on their board agenda about whether or not to commit to or to look at the contribution so that the roundabout would facilitate the Bass Lake Regional Park as well. And I was at the meeting, there were some concerns, when they looked at what it would cost to build their own access on that side of the park, it was comparable in cost, if not less, the roundabout contribution. And so my only comments to them were that, well, yeah, you should analyze it, this could conceivably be a better project for you than you doing it yourself. You should also be concerned about whether it meets your needs. You know, I know that residents are concerned about, with the park, they're talking about they can't do both entrances for that eastern parking lot. We had originally talked 2016, 2017, that at Silver Springs and Bass Lake Road, where the new intersection is a three-way, it's configured to be eventually a four. There's room for the turn lane. In fact, it's sort of a private driveway that they built for the resident right there. So we thought, well, that's a natural opportunity, right, to get access to the park, and then you have 2 points of entrance and egress for that small parking lot. It's like 140 cars, I think, what they're talking about now. But apparently they can't do 2 access points. They're saying it's the roundabout. So in terms of their plan, their environmental review documents aren't out yet, so it's a mitigated negative.
There has to at least be another emergency egress.
Well, an EVA maybe, but then again, the only other place would probably be across from Madera, which interferes with the intersection at Silver Springs. And I think the big concern is that private driveway they built for the resident to mitigate the impact of the resident's access, his driveway access, which is
Well,
permitted.
they're gonna need an improved encroachment permit from DOT.
Yes.
So there's gonna be some consistency in respect to what the county is gonna be advocating for versus what ultimately the CSD will be allowed to build as part of their access.
Yeah, well, it's a big concern in the Bass Lake area because we're talking, I mean, initially they were talking 500 spaces on the west side, 140 on the east side, where most of the residents are. And then, you know, that's had a sort of morphed into now, we were hearing the county talking about like 1,000 cars in total, 1,000 spaces. That's more than there are residents there. So that's a big impact to circulation and safety. And then the other concern obviously is, you know, how do you provide access to the park space for the residents on the east side? And now you guys walk the space over there to see how you get around to the shopping center. And the CSD has some ideas about how they could facilitate. I know the Transportation Commission has a plan for a mixed-use Class A, I think, bike pedestrian on the park property. So there are a lot of opportunities to make something good work there. Roundabout sounds like they might have an ability to facilitate a crosswalk, get pedestrians through. But it just needs to be analyzed, and I think the feedback from the residents is important.
Historically, the main access to the park, I know because I worked on that
Well,
project.
that park, the little park, the 41 acres.
Right.
Yeah.
But overall, what's included both along that section of Bass Lake Road was at Silver Springs and Bass Lake Road. That was the proposed main access. And then these other, Madera was never historically an access.
I think the conflict came in with the configuration of
Right.
Silver Springs and Bass Lake is that is technically, there's no right of way there. It's the resident's driveway.
Well,
So then it would be offset from the intersection,
yeah,
so.
I'm not necessarily buying that, but,
Well, That's what it's like on a map, and that's what they've said, so. I know you worked on it for a long time. There's a lot of.
well, I
history
know
behind it.
when they negotiated with the owner, they negotiated and got right away for the fourth leg of that access for that access to the park.
The northbound turn lane is there. It's just blocked off right now, so.
So, I
fingers
mean,
crossed.
ideal, in a perfect world, I'd love to see 2 roundabouts, one there at Silver Springs and one, because one of the main concerns is speed, right? If you had a roundabout there and a roundabout at Bridlewood, that would significantly slow down the traffic, keep people moving. But, you know, without them saying it, I gotta believe cost is a big factor for the CSD. I'll leave it at that. So, I hope they hear me, but
Oh.
yes.
It's always a factor for any public agency.
Yeah.
Where do funds come from, right? Because it takes away from something else.
Well, and I
Like
don't
a
know if they're
traffic signal.
mentioning that, but that to me is probably a primary issue, is cost.
A traffic signal is about $1 million now, right?
Yeah.
The standard intersection, and so they're talking about a traffic signal on Toronto Parkway at that entrance, and like, well, it's a $15 million project. $1 million traffic signal, that's a tremendous part of your budget. So how do you build it? So I know that they're looking at all the alternatives, right? It's gonna be a phased project, so. But yeah, the roundabout can help with our circulation issues over there and the pedestrian issues, so.
Right, and there's, like I said, like in this case, there's a lot of grant funding. And a lot of that stuff could be offset, those finances with those grant options to include around about at Silver Springs as well, so.
More to come on that whole thing as the plans develop and we get more detail. Yep. Okay, any final questions, go backs for anybody on the leadership team? Because I do want to open up for public comment again, to allow Joel to share with us his thoughts. So let's go to you, Joel. Looks like you're still here with us. So I'm opening up public comment again if you would like to participate at this point.
Okay. Can you hear me?
Yes, you're fine.
Okay. I was interested when it said that you were talking about public health. I was concerned about SB 1383, the new mandate to divert food waste to from the landfills. The policy seems to be that we now take things that we put into garbage and put it into the green waste, and not put plastic bags in there. I found that it's difficult to find compostable bags, and the ones that I find are very flimsy. And if you toss it in with green waste stuff, whatever you have, it's going to tear. And there's a significant increase in the fly problems around the trash cans. The waste management trash cans are not really fly tight. So it reduces some of the fly population getting in there, but not to anything that is reasonably effective. I just thought I would raise the concerns with the Department of Public Health since they were here, but I'm not sure if they're here or not. So that's basically all I had on it.
So let me respond to that because I do have a little bit of information. So Waste Management does have a website where they have recommendations on the bags that can be used. And presumably they are available online. I'm not sure they're readily available in a hardware store or something, but they have defined what they view as being the preferred way to eliminate those odors in a bag that can be properly put into the organic waste system. And so that should be available. If you would like, we can send you a link to where that website is, or we can give you the contact information for the people that were running it. Because that came up in a discussion I had with Greg Stanfield, who used to be our Director of Environmental Management, and then also the current director, about what we're doing with waste management to try to accommodate that ick factor as they refer to it. So I think there are solutions presumably available, but they may not be something you can drive down the street and get. You may have to order them online. So if that would be helpful, we can send you the link.
Well, you can put it into the minutes of the meeting, and I can get it from there.
Excellent, because I have seen reports or maggots, in that organic waste recycling and stuff, and they always recommend you use some grass clippings or something else to mix in with it if you have those available.
Well, one of the problems with grass clippings is EID a couple of decades ago said that we should be getting rid of our lawns, so I did. I pulled out 800 square feet of grass,
any, is that it?
and I don't have any. I have a lot. I've got some oak leaves, but they don't do too well on the bags.
Yeah, I understand.
All right,
So,
I'm done.
Now, I appreciate the comments because it is something that we're all trying to work through. My understanding is that there will be a presentation before the Board of Supervisors made by Waste Management that talks about the proper approaches to this, because I've posed several questions about which should really go in that versus a landfill. And it's simple things like if you're eating fruits that have pits, does a pit go in a landfill or does it go into the organic waste? It seems like it's the organic waste, but there's a lot of things that you come across every day that says, where does it go? I got 3 containers now, right? Where should it go? What goes in the organic waste specifically? So, but again, it's in compliance with the state regulation. So we have to do our best to try to comply with that and yeah, I guess proceed cautiously, but they have, in my opinion, perhaps introduced some public health concerns that weren't fully identified, but that's what the state does, I guess.
To the surprise of absolutely nobody.
Well, I think it does make sense for restaurants and stuff. I'm not sure it makes a lot of sense for residential users. So I think they probably went a little too far with this one, but that's just an opinion. But no, I appreciate the comments, and we will get the link out in the minutes and make sure that people know where they can go get information on the bags that are being recommended.
Great, thank you.
You betcha. Thank you. So if there's no further go backs, I'll just finish up with our council member items. Our next meeting is Monday, September the 12th. And Karen Coleman is not going to be our guest speaker.
No.
So this copy didn't get updated. I asked you to put
Yeah, I
out
sent
an
them all out.
update. Okay, so I guess the one I got just didn't have the update. Our guest speaker next month will be from the Elections Department, Bill O'Neill, and probably Linda will be here to talk about the upcoming election and election security and all those things. And then Karen will be our October speaker. So we did do a change out with that, so to make everybody aware. So I very much encourage you, if you have concerns about election fraud and that sort of thing, to be at our next meeting. Bill's told me he already has a presentation put together, so he's gonna probably just touch that up for the purposes of the El Dorado Hills group. He may talk about election sites and some of that as well. It's typically a question, if I don't return my mail-in ballot, or if I want to go drop it off personally, where can I drop it off? And I know our fire stations have been acting in that role for a long time and probably will continue to be, but we need to make sure that the public understands where they can safely drop off their ballot if they're concerned with putting it in the mail and what might happen before it gets to elections. So there's all those kinds of safeguards. I know I personally drive mine to the county since I'm up there a lot and just deposit in the drop box, and I knew it went in the drop box. So elections is the only one who has access to that, short of somebody cutting a hole in the box and stealing the ballots, but I don't know that that's happened yet. So
Or what a concept, go vote on election day.
you can do that.
Wow.
A lot of people do. Sometimes it's a significant challenge to try to get to an election place on
Really?
election day, depending upon what else is on your schedule. Yeah, voting is important. If you do it in person, great. If you choose to use other methods, that's great too. So, all right. So with that, I think we're adjourned. So I appreciate everybody's participation. It looks like it's about 6:36. And we will see you back hopefully September 12th at 5 p.m. Not bad at all, yeah.